You might be thinking, okay, Damon, you're telling me that even if I value something, I shouldn't? How does that make any sense? You probably hear people talk about values quite a bit. Not only in NLP do we talk a lot about values, but you might hear even in political conversation talk of values like family values, countries' values, cultures' values. We hear about values a lot, but what you don't hear a lot of people doing is defining what are values. What is a value? Do we have our own personal values? Do we know what those are? I don't think most people do. I think most people get very confused between their own personal values and values that they were taught to believe is important. You should value this, rather as opposed to, do I actually value this? So anyway, what is a value? Well, I'm going to use the definition that my mentor, the late Steve Andreas, gave, and that is a value is a generalization about an experience that is important to you. It's really that simple. And I do say generalization, and generalization is something that is rather intangible. A value is intangible. A value is not something you can put your hands on. And that doesn't mean that you can't value material objects, but it's the value behind having that material object that is what you're after, and that is an intangible because that is an experience. So it is an experience, and experience is not tangible. We want to get very clear about that. So a value is not a skill either, because a skill is something you cultivate, and knowledge, again, is something you acquire. So these would not be values. Certainly you can value them, but you want to look at the value behind the knowledge, having the knowledge that you want, or the value behind the skill that you acquire. Now, before we go further into this discussion, because it will go deep, if you find yourself liking this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to this channel by clicking the subscribe button right down here. And if you want to know what freebie I'm giving away, which I do nearly every single video that I do, and you're a little impatient, you can go down to the description and you'll see that there's a link. Click that link and you'll see what it is that I'm giving away for free. Why am I making this video? Well, I'm making this video because a few videos ago, I mentioned I was in a session where I was doing a group coaching, and we were doing a values elicitation all together, and people were coming up with different values, and I was saying, why you would not want to use that as a value. And somebody came in and said, hey, well, you're invalidating all of our values. And I was like, no, I'm not invalidating your values. I'm basically telling you which values that if you focus on them, there are traps. And so I'm saving you a lot of time and effort and frustration by telling you what values not to go after. And then when that video came out, somebody commented underneath and said, would you do a video talking about the values that we should not be focused on? And so I thought, wow, that actually would make a great video. And it's because it's really important. So when you make comments down below and suggest videos, I read those comments, I respond to all of the comments. And I have made several videos off of your suggestion. I highly recommend that if there's a video that you have not seen, that you would like to see about NLP, or I can do personal development in general, let me know in the comments below. I like I said, I do read them, I respond to all of them, and if you make a really good suggestion for a video, I'm going to jump on it. So start off, any value that you elicit where you put self in front of the word, I recommend that you just throw the self part away, okay? One of the ones that comes up a lot is self-love, okay? It sounds really good, right? Who doesn't want to focus on self-love, or who doesn't want a healthy helping of some self-love? And it's not that I think that self-love is not good, it's just that you create a duality anytime you put self in front of it. So let me back up and try and go at this a different way, and then we'll come back to the same point. What is love? Well, love, to me, one aspect of love is that it's all-inclusive, right? It doesn't exclude anything. That's one of the beautiful things about love. Why don't you just go with love as a value rather than self-love? Because love as a value includes everyone, including yourself. Why would you ever exclude yourself from love? Now, just by understanding that, like if you came up with the value of self-love, like you want more self-love in your life, or, in whatever it is that you're doing, and you hear me explain this, and then you go back to that and you say, oh yeah, well, if I pull out the self and I just look at love for what it is, which is all inclusive, which means of course I'm included, The problem should be solved right there if you were excluding yourself. Now you just include yourself in that. And when you put self in front of love like that, you might be thinking, well, why can't I just put it there? Why not? What does it hurt? Well, because when you put self in front of it, it sort of implies, like, why would you even question that to begin with? Why would you ever question whether or not you would include yourself? It's love, and it's love that's coming from you. Just by putting self in front of it, you're actually bringing in the idea of it's quite possible to not love yourself, or that you might have a part of you that doesn't love the other part of you. And it kind of doesn't make sense. So just take that out altogether, and it removes the confusion. It removes the duality. And what I mean by duality is, if you're saying, well, I got to love myself more, then you're going to have to create this weird idea in your mind of splitting yourself into two different parts. One that loves the other part, or that has to be talked into loving the other part. And this is where we're creating more problems. We're creating more conflict. We're creating more division and separation within ourselves. So just pull the plug on all that. It's love. Let's just value love without the self in front of it. And when you value love, that means you have love for people, for things, and you're a people too. You're a person. So of course you would include yourself. So let's not create any more noise or friction and just go with love. Now, the same thing happens when we talk about self-respect. Now, respect has its own problem. I did a video on that. I will talk a little bit more about respect in a moment. But again, self-respect, same thing. You're dividing yourself in half. You're saying that one part needs to, respect the other part, and you're just creating a lot of problems there too. So not only would I say remove the self from self-respect, I would say just remove this altogether, and we'll talk more in a moment about what you can do with respect. So just know that self in front of it is going to create more problems. I'm going to do one more just to kind of show you why this becomes a problem. Self-confidence. If you're talking about confidence and you value confidence, most of us do, pretty much all of us do. Confidence about what? All real confidence starts with the self anyway. So if you put the self in front of it, again, you're just calling a bunch of attention to something that it's really not necessary. Of course, self-confidence, as opposed to what else? I mean, you want confidence in the markets? Okay, that's a completely different thing. Confidence in other people? Okay, but if you don't have confidence in yourself, you're off to a shaky start to begin with. Let's pull the self part out of it. If you value confidence, you value confidence. Now, confidence has another problem with it, and I'm going to talk about that in a moment too. But just know that anytime you put self in front of anything, you're likely creating more noise, more friction than is needed. If you just pull the self out, let it be a little more general. Of course you include yourself. Why would you ever think that you shouldn't or couldn't exclude yourself in any value, which would necessitate putting the word self in front of it? It just creates duality, which creates friction, which creates noise and problems that you don't need. So anytime you're eliciting your values and that comes out, and it's fine, it still happens to me too. I just go, oh, okay, that's a problem. Remove the self. Okay, what is this value like whenever it's just is, like love? It just is. It's just there. It's just coming out of me. I'm expressing it. I'm receiving it. I don't need to push it in a certain direction or something like that, or make sure it's coming, that I'm having self-love. No, I just experience love, and it's a beautiful thing. So just let it be that. Just let it be there. Now let's move on to some values that I just think that if these come up for you, you should just find something else. I'll have some suggestions for you. Oftentimes people will, when I'm eliciting their values or they're eliciting their own values, they will come up with the word power, okay? And in most cases, I would assume they mean this in a good way. And what do I mean by that? Well, what does power imply? Power implies power over others, power over things, power over situations. So it implies superiority, okay? And this is a problem. This leads to self-importance, and we disconnect if you feel superior to others. Now, a lot of you might be saying, well, no, I don't mean it that way. It doesn't matter. You got to be careful with the words you use, because all words have implications, and sometimes those implications are really, really subtle. But I don't think the implications with power are very subtle. But you might be thinking, okay, I didn't mean it that way. And I believe you. But every once in a while I do come across someone who's like, no, I want power. And it's like, okay, you're going to create a lot of problems for yourself. So in general, because there are so many implications to the word power, I don't recommend that you focus on that as a value. Now, it might come up, it might come out of you. It has for me too. I'm listening to my values and I'm like, ooh, okay, this thing, power, comes out. I didn't see that one coming. Go to what it is, especially if you're saying, well, I don't mean it that way. I don't mean it as being superior to others. What is it about power then that seems important here? So it bears a little more looking into. And this is good. This is not don't beat yourself up for this value coming up for you. That's not what you want to do at all. You want to say, okay, well, I need to look into this a little bit more. So I think a good alternative to the word power, to harvest what's good about power without going into the negative parts about power, which is, about being superior to others, which would only serve to disconnect you from others, is empowerment. Try that one on. Empowerment. And so what does that mean when you say empowerment versus power? And you can even say it to yourself and notice how it feels different. So I can't say what is in your experience, and we're all a little bit different, right? But the experience I get from empowerment is that it's something sort of coming from me that is sort of breathing life and energy and motivation into me. And it doesn't really concern anyone else. It's not about my connections or relationships with other people at all. It's only about, giving me sort of the get up and go get them attitude, or the get up and go get them feeling. When I say empowerment, or when I think empowerment, especially as a value, I don't get any sense of it meaning superiority to others at all. And in fact, I think the feeling of empowerment can be just as powerful with connecting with other people. When you feel empowered, you're not afraid to go talk to those people. You're not afraid to connect. You're not afraid to be vulnerable. Whatever, all the things that it takes for us to connect with other people. So try that on, and maybe it doesn't work for you. Maybe you examine power and you say, okay, no, but there's some other things in power that I want. And I get what you're saying, Damon. I can leave those other parts out. Okay, do that. You don't have to use the word empowerment. But find what it is that is really important to you about power. And then if you stripped away all of the other implications, what are you left with? And that's what I would go with. So another value that comes up a lot that you want to not do, you want to not focus on, is pride. Pride comes up a lot. We're taught a lot of times, even if you've grown up in America, you've been taught to be a proud American. And so this gets a little controversial, because when I talk about this, people go like, what are you talking about? You're not proud to be an American. You're not proud of your country. You're not proud of this, proud of that. You're not proud of your kids. So here's the problem with pride. Now, I remember whenever I was 17 and I went to Switzerland on my own to meet a friend there who was from Switzerland. This was one of the most eye-opening experiences I ever had, which was to go to a different country and realize that, where I'd grown up was like not the entirety of the world, that there's other things going on. My friend asked me, he said, are you proud to be an American? And I was like, of course I am. What, are you nuts? Are you crazy? Or aren't you proud to be Swiss? And he says, no. And I was like, are you crazy? Like, what do you mean you're not proud to be Swiss? And he goes, I didn't do anything to become Swiss. I was just born here. Whoa, okay, that kind of rearranged my thinking. Later on, many, many years later, I was interviewing my mentor, Steve Andreas, the late Steve Andreas, and I asked him what was he most proud of. Gave me a little crack on the head, not literally, but figuratively. And he said, I don't do pride. And I was like, well, what do you mean? Aren't you, and I went through the whole thing. Aren't you proud of this? Aren't you proud of that? And he goes, pride has implications of taking credit for things you did not do. And sometimes taking credit for things that maybe you had a part in, but you couldn't take full credit for. But pride sort of implies that we do. So if I was a proud American, that would mean that I'm taking credit for being American, first of all, which I cannot do, and taking credit for people's accomplishments throughout this country's history, I couldn't possibly take credit for. Really, the only thing that I can take credit for is I pay my taxes. I do donate some money to charity, and I try to be a good law-abiding citizen. But man, I am only part of a much larger system where many people have done some incredibly amazing things throughout the history of this country. I can't take credit for that. There's so many things that you cannot take credit for, even if you're part of the process. And you think about, like, if maybe you own a successful business, and so you could say, well, I'm taking credit for that and I'm proud of that. Yeah, but there were so many things that made that possible. And it's not to say that you didn't work hard for it. I'm sure you did. But there are so many things that go in with that you can't take credit for. And when we try to, It removes something that's very important to us, which is gratitude and humility. It's hard to access gratitude and humility when you're proud. And so pride limits you in many ways. It inflates your sense of self. It makes you feel more self-important. And so it really just gets in the way of you living more free, more whole, and connecting with other people. So when it comes to pride, find out what it is about it that interests you, that you value, but remove that part of it, strip it down, remove the other implications out of it, and see what you have left. And a lot of times the word will be satisfaction or fulfillment. And I will address those too, because those are problematic. But for right now, know that not only is pride problematic, it's destructive. And if you look at any of the major religions, whether it's Christianity or even Buddhism, pride shows up as something to be avoided at all costs. Even in Christianity, the 7 deadly sins, pride shows up as one of the 7 deadly sins, and that's not without by mistake. And then in Buddhism, it's one of the poisons. Take it from philosophy, take it from the great religions, and take it from me. Pride will get you into trouble. It's not a value that you want to focus on. It's not something you want to try to fulfill. There are better things than pride. And like I said, look at what's important to you about pride, strip out the other implications, and I guarantee you'll have something different, probably something much better. I want to cover 2 in one swoop, and that is discipline and willpower. Now, a lot of people put self-discipline, and it's the same issue that I mentioned before. What would be the difference between self and discipline other than it just creates a lot of noise and a lot of problems? Anyway, you don't want to do willpower and discipline. Willpower and discipline, and I've done many videos about this, is a crutch. Willpower and discipline is what you need when you're trying to fight yourself, when you're trying to bulldoze over the internal resistance that you feel when it comes to achieving something that you want. People might be saying, well, what's wrong with that? There's lots wrong with it. That resistance that you're experiencing is an important part of you. It's a valid part of you, and all parts of you are valid. And it has a positive intent for you. It's just been disconnected and isolated. And when you experience resistance, it's a great opportunity to integrate that resistance. So I'll link some videos to this video about resistance and how to deal with it. But the one way that you do not want to deal with it is to try to just bulldoze over it, to try to just defeat it, to beat it. No, this is an opportunity to become more whole. And you do that by integrating this part of you. Willpower and discipline are finite. They will give out at a certain point. There's only so much of it that you have. And some people have greater or stronger willpower than others. Some people have more discipline than others. But at some point it doesn't matter who you are, it will fall apart. It's like a muscle. Once that muscle is exhausted, it's done. So what do you have after that? Most people don't know. So once that willpower, that discipline runs out, they're dry, they're done, they're exhausted. They don't have anywhere else to go with that. Here's the thing. When you're very, very clear about what your values are, and you're congruent with them, and you're connected with those values as it relates to whatever it is that you're trying to do, you do not need willpower. You do not need discipline. Because if you're fully integrated and you're fully congruent about what it is that you want, and you're clear about what it is, well, there is no resistance. So there's nothing to fight. There's nothing to bulldoze over. So you don't need willpower and discipline. You're naturally motivated. If you had a plate of food in front of you and you were starving, and this was your favorite plate of food, you wouldn't feel like you needed willpower or discipline to eat it. There's just a direct connection to it. You see it, you know it, you have the need for it, you want it, you desire it, you just go and have it. And that's how you want to be with what it is that you want to accomplish in your life. And that will take some consideration, some thought. That will take eliciting your values, gathering information, integrating resistance. So when you do all that, not only are you more likely to achieve what it is you want and much faster, it's more fulfilling and more enjoyable every step of the way, rather than using willpower and discipline to fight yourself. So if willpower and discipline or self-discipline comes up for you, know that it just means that you're not as clear about your values as you could be, and that it means that you have resistance to integrate, which is a wonderful thing when you do, because it will heal you and make you much more fulfilled and focused on what it is that you want. Now, I mentioned I would cover respect. Now, respect, and I've done this in a different video, but I'll cover it here real quickly. If you value respect, and here's the thing, we all enjoy respect. Who doesn't like having somebody, be respectful toward us? So I'm not saying you should shun that. You should absolutely embrace that, love it. If somebody's doing it and it feels good, go ahead and enjoy the feeling of it, enjoy that experience. But if you use respect as a value to focus on and you don't get it, And you don't have control over it because you don't control whether or not people will respect you. You just don't. Even if you're acting in the most respectable way and you're respecting them, there's no law that says that they must respect you back. When you focus on respect and you don't get it, you get resentful, you get angry. And a lot of times that will stop you in your tracks. If you value respect and that's why you're doing something, well, when you don't get it, you're probably going to stop doing it. So is that really what it's about for you? Or is there some other value behind what it is that you want to do, what it is you want to create, whatever goal it is you want to accomplish? There probably is. But if respect is the only reason you're doing something, well, the moment you don't get the respect, you're going to stop. Of course you would. That's the value is the motivation of why you're doing it. Go at stuff because you truly value it, and you value it because you validate it internally. Does it make you happy? Happiness is a value. Well, if it makes you happy, there's only one person who can validate whether or not it makes you happy, and that is you. But if you're focused on respect and you're not getting it because you can't force people to respect you, you're going to get angry, you're going to get resentful, and that's not going to help you. You don't want to use respect. You certainly don't want to use self-respect for all the reasons that I've already mentioned. Now, what can you use? Well, I'd say that there's probably other values behind what it is that you want. Focus on those. What you also might find, if you're going after something and the only reason you're going after it is respect, it's time to find a new goal, because that's not truly going to fulfill you if you're after other people's respect. It will have a limited amount of fulfillment, a limited amount of satisfaction, but it'll wear off really quick if your personal values are not involved. Now, you certainly can value being respectable. You could do that. If you're a respectful or respectable person, well, that you have control over, because especially if you're using your own validation of that. When you're being a respectful person, when you're being a respectable person. And if that makes you feel good, then you're experiencing that value of respect, but it's coming from you. It's being validated by you. You're not waiting for other people to validate it. So if that's how you're doing it, then I say go for it. If that makes you feel good, if that fulfills something inside of you, then use that. So now I'm going to cover some values that are not bad at all. They're just not going to be very helpful. And one of the reasons they're not going to be very helpful, or let's say two of the reasons they're not very helpful, is one, they're just way too general. And the other reason is that most of these, if not all of the ones I'm going to mention, they're sort of the symptom or the byproduct of what you get when you fulfill very high level values. Values like happiness, joy, peace, passion, creativity. When you fulfill values like that, which you will probably often come up with when you're doing a value solicitation on something you want, it's when you fulfill those that you then get these other values come into play. But you can't go at these values directly. They're just too broad. They're too general. Now, I made a list here to make sure I didn't forget. So one of them is fulfillment. That alone, it's right there. It's like, I get that people saying that a lot of times. I say, okay, what is it you want? They'll tell me their goal, and I'll say, what would that do for you? And they'll say, well, I'll be fulfilled. And it's like, okay, we just jumped across this huge, vast area of all these values that sort of lead up to fulfillment, but we need to know what those values are in order to achieve fulfillment. Fulfillment is just it's too broad, it's too general to focus on it and to try to go at it directly. It's not going to be helpful at all. You need to find out, well, what is it that gives you fulfillment? Fulfilling which values comes out to be fulfillment. Usually when you fulfill 3 to 5 very high level values that you experience fulfillment. And those values are probably going to be slightly different from context to context. 3 very general values that shows up in pretty much every context of my life is freedom, joy, and passion. So if I have freedom, joy, and passion in almost anything that I do, I'm going to feel fulfilled. But I know that I have to focus on those 3, the activities, the behaviors that give me fulfillment in those areas, give me fulfillment in those values in order to achieve that greater fulfillment. So again, going straight to fulfillment, it's just too broad, too general. And again, it's what you get when you fulfill your values. Satisfaction, that's what another one that comes up a lot. And it's pretty much the same thing as fulfillment. If I'm fulfilling my highest values, I'm going to feel satisfied. But if I try to go at satisfaction directly, it's like, okay, well, how do you do that? Unfortunately, what a lot of people will do is they'll go after comfort to try to give themselves satisfaction. Comfort is a value, but it's a very low-level value. You will only get so much fulfillment and satisfaction out of comfort, though that doesn't stop people from trying. But there's no amount of sitting on the couch doing nothing or, lying in bed all day, which feels very comfortable, that's going to totally fulfill you and give you satisfaction. It's just not going to happen. So again, satisfaction, too broad, too general, and it's what you get when you fulfill your values. The next one on the list is confidence. Confidence is very similar to satisfaction and fulfillment. You will feel confidence with a value when you fulfill it. If I am experiencing happiness, then I'm pretty confident that I'm a happy person, or at least I'm happy for this time being. That's where confidence comes from, but confidence also comes from knowledge. It comes from experience. So the more you experience something, the more information you have about something, the more sure you are about it. So the more confidence you will feel. So you cannot go at confidence directly. So it's very similar to what I've been saying about these other values. Confidence has to come as a byproduct of lots of experience around something, lots of knowledge around something. I mean, if you think about anything that you do a lot, you will feel confidence around it. If you've been driving for several years, and you get in the car and you don't even think about confidence, you just get to where you're going and you don't get tickets, you don't get into accidents, you probably feel like a very confident driver. But true confidence is not something you think about too much, which is probably what you're experiencing around that. Now, people come to me and say, hey, I'm terrified of public speaking. I want to be more confident in public speaking. And then I'll say, okay, well, how much public speaking do you do? And they'll say, well, none. I'm too afraid to do it. Well, there's a good reason why you don't feel confident about something if you've never done it or you don't do much of it. So the more you do something, the more confident you will be at it. And you just cannot fake that. You cannot shortcut that. Now, in NLP, you will see very often people will use anchors for this sort of thing. And I say just be very cautious about that. If you give yourself fake confidence and then you go run out and do something that you don't really have the skills, the knowledge, the understanding to do, you can get yourself hurt. You can get a lot of other people hurt as well. So then you might say, well, how do I go out and do stuff that I haven't done before? Well, be confident that you're a beginner. Be confident of what you do not know, so that you don't get yourself into trouble. And then be confident that you are a good enough learner, that you will figure it out, that you will learn it. Put your sense of certainty where you are certain and don't fake that, because like I said, it will get you into trouble. So the next three are pretty much all the same as far as why you shouldn't value it or shouldn't go after it as a value. That is self-esteem, purpose, and meaning, like meaning in life. So they're pretty much all the same thing. Self-esteem is how you feel about yourself, kind of like whether or not you like yourself. And so that comes with embodying the values that you value as qualities of who you are. When you do that, then you basically, in a sense, value yourself because you embody those qualities. And so your self-esteem will go up, but you cannot go at self-esteem directly. Lots of people will try. They try to use things like affirmations, but that's all just trying to fake it, and that's not going to serve you very well. Purpose and meaning, again, too broad, too general. You can't go at it directly, but I assure you, when you are fulfilling your highest values, you will feel purpose, you will feel meaningful, but you just can't go at it from that direction. You have to go through your values first. I hope that was very helpful to you. That's my list of values for now. I'm sure there are more. I'm sure if I sat down and thought about it longer, there are other traps that you'd want to avoid, other values that are traps in the long run, or they really don't help you that much. But I've given you plenty. These are the most common sort of landmines to avoid. And so if you can understand this and avoid those, you're going to save yourself a lot of trouble, a lot of effort, a lot of frustration. So make sure you watch out for these. And if you find these sort of coming out of you, that's fine. Don't judge yourself if these come up. Just look at them and go, okay, I need to sort this out. I need to figure out how to find something that's more useful here. And if you want to take this further, if like you heard me mention doing a values elicitation many times, you may never have done that. Or maybe you have, but you weren't sure how to do it, or you were kind of confused about it. In the description right here down below, you will find a link. Click on that link and you will get a free PDF on how to elicit your values. And it gives you little spaces and everything for you to fill it in. Just makes it super easy, just makes it more structured for you. And then, of course, if you notice any of these values that I mentioned coming up, you'll know what to do to sort of reframe them, reword them, rework them so that they are much better for you. If you like this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't already, I don't know why you wouldn't have already, but if you haven't, click that subscribe button and the bell so you'll be notified when I put new videos out, which tends to be every Wednesday and every Saturday. And last but not least, if you can think of a friend or a family member who would benefit from this video, make sure you share it with them. Take care.